You're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football presented by Boost Mobile. My name is Daniel Dopp, here alongside my two best friends, Yates and Mike Clay. Guys, we got a very big Rankings Wednesday show set up for you. Mike, it is your first day here. Actually, I want to say something real quick, if you don't mind first. I had a dream last night.
Oh, okay.
Both of you guys were in my dream. I just want to share it with everybody. Fields, you and I were at Home Depot. I believe it was Home Depot. Maybe it was Lowe's. It was a home improvement store.
Whoever sponsors the pod, you were there. Okay.
Yes. And so we were there. Cisco was there with you.
Okay.
I had my pup Zoe there as well. They were having a ton of fun running around playing with each other in the aisles, which is great because you can take your pups there to those kind of
your
home
kids,
improvement stores.
your dogs.
Exactly.
I got it, yeah.
And we were there because Mac Hollins was doing like a DIY thing.
This is awesome.
Right? So it was like we were learning how to be able to do something. So we were there. It was very cool. We ran into our old friend, Steve Cerruti, who now at the Ringer is a great dude.
Yeah, great dude.
Crushing it. I love Steve, and if you're listening, Steve, I'm sure Steve doesn't listen to Fantasy Focus, but if for some reason
Possible.
you do, we love you, man.
Yeah, we
miss
do
you
love
very
Steve.
much.
Yep.
And so
Go
we were
Magic.
doing a whole thing, you know, and Mac taught us all this stuff. We bought all these things, and we were like, man, we got to figure out how to get home. It's not going to fit in our cars. So we called an Uber, and you'll never guess who showed up to drive us home.
Mike Clay?
Mike Clay.
What a
We needed
guy.
a little bit of extra coin in order to be able
Always
to
there
get
when
us
you need
home
him.
there, which
That's
was nice. So
Hey, look, I'm trying to keep up with the life you two live with your high-end seven-figure salary, so I got to do some things on the side, you know, make some.
It's funny. It's a totally like quirky, random, wild dream, and it's amazing to see how dreams evolve as you get older in life. I wake up. My older daughter wakes me up every single morning. That's how I get up in the morning because she is the two. She does not sleep nearly as much as her younger sister does, which hopefully her younger sister never changes. Hopefully Kinley, my older daughter, does change. But when she calls me to wake her up, I go over and I say, all right, morning, Kinley, and I always ask her, how'd you sleep? Always says good. And then I always, did you have any dreams? Yes. What did you dream about? And her response, every day without fail, is just listing every person or thing she can think of. What'd you dream about? Mommy, Daddy, Palmer, Cisco, Marmar, Gigi, Papo, Ono, Cisco, Figgy, Lemmy. And you're like, okay, fine.
all right. Sounds like a very full dream is what it sounds
She
like.
just keeps listing stuff that she can think of. It is hilarious.
By the way, sometimes, people just invent things out of nowhere, and you might be onto something there. Like bring your pet to Home Depot Day and have a celebrity there to do a,
you know what? Home
workshop
Depot
thing.
Just reach out. I'm just saying that we have something maybe we could work on together. We
Do
can
that.
make something work.
Me and my oldest daughter, we're working on a card game. We're working on inventing our own card game.
Like a board game that you play with people?
Well, like a card game, yeah.
Yeah.
She loves those things, so we're working on that. So see,
Wow.
people, what about you? What's your invention?
I have none. I have no invention whatsoever. I have no
Keep up.
ingenuity. I
Keep
just
up
have
with it.
funny kids.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think kids are hilarious. I think the way their brain works is also great. One last story, then we'll talk about football, is for some reason, my wife came down a couple mornings ago, and I was downstairs in the kitchen with my older daughter. Again, I just told you, we wake up together early, and she comes downstairs, and like my daughter looks at my wife kind of with like this disconcerted look, and she was like, what's wrong? And she goes, Daddy won't share his cereal with me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not eating cereal. I have a cup of coffee in my hand. She did not ask for it. Like, we're just sitting there, like, talking, having, like, a conversation. She's like, Daddy won't share his cereal. And so now, it's just been stuck on her brain for, like, 4 days. So, like, she'll just, like, we'll be downstairs. She'll be like, Daddy, why don't you share your cereal with me?
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, we're playing Legos right now. Like, what do you mean share my cereal with you?
Code for something?
Yeah, I was
like
going to say, like, what do you actually mean?
Do you ever feed your daughter breakfast? I think that's what
Well,
that
she
is.
does. She does enjoy cereal. Yes, yeah. We have breakfast every morning together. She loves the same things that most nearly 3-year-olds love, right? She likes bagels with butter and Eggo waffles and eggs and oatmeal and raspberries and things like that. And cereal. But for some reason, I won't share. I don't eat cereal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do on occasion, but it's not like I wake up in the morning and immediately go pour myself a bowl of Wheaties. That might explain, why my fantasy focused show league team is struggling. I'm not getting enough Wheaties.
That's what it is.
Anyways, I digress.
That's what it is. I think dreams are fun, for what it's worth. Not everyone can remember their dreams when they wake up in the morning.
I rarely
Sometimes
do.
Really?
I rarely do.
I asked Rosie about it, and she's like, I'm not. I mean, sometimes like it'll stick, but a lot of times it's just like it's gone like within like 15
the
seconds
wind.
after you wake
I
up.
almost always forget.
Yeah. All right, we are going to dive into some football. We'll talk about some things here. Very excited to be able to do the show with you guys. In fact, it is Mike Clay's only show this week.
It is, yes.
Mike is going to be out on Thursday and Friday, so make sure that you tune in on Thursday and Friday for some extra good shows.
Yeah, Stefania always talks about her boondoggles and stuff, and they seem so fun. So I thought I would do one.
You're boondoggling in the middle. It's not like it's week 11 and people are making a playoff push, Mike. No big deal.
No, no way. No way. We're celebrating a 1 year of ESPN Bet. So
hey, that's exciting.
Did you get the invite?
You know what? I did not get the invite. I think it must have gotten lost in the mail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, yeah, you guys aren't invited. So bring us big shots.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Interesting.
You have to have a certain amount of accuracy in your prop bets.
Oh, that's what it
column
is.
just missed the cut.
Some of us can't bet. Not allowed
Some
to.
of us can't. Yeah, you're ineligible.
that's
You
true.
can't
Technically,
go.
I've never missed a bet.
That's right.
That's right.
Technically speaking.
Yeah, you never miss a bet you don't take a shot on, so that's a thing. Speaking of Wheaties, I feel like there was a Michael Jordan crossover there that I just barely missed, but it's all right.
Close enough. Whatever.
Or was that Wayne Gretzky? Is that Wayne Gretzky that said you never
Probably-
miss a shot you don't take?
Michael Scott said that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's what it is. All right, let's dive into the Week 11 rankings, my friends. We're going to start at the wide receiver position as we usually do, starting at 1 through 10. And I think there is at least one surprise name very high at the top of this list, guys.
Yes.
Wide receiver 1, we got Jamar Chase, then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, George Pickens, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Garrett Wilson, and CeeDee Lamb round out the top 10. Guys, George Pickens
Makes me happy.
makes it all the way inside the top 5. Mike, when you're looking at this, I mean, George Pickens has had some really nice weeks, but there hasn't always been a ton of consistency there. Why are you ranking him with the projection so high this week?
Yeah, so best quarterback play of his career for sure so far. And like you could say what you want about Justin Fields earlier this season, but he ran the ball a lot, and that took away passing volume. And George Pickens is finally reaching his peak, which we hope to see when he was drafted. I mean, we know the guy has all the talent in the world. And it's happened as of late. Last 3 games, 18.0 fantasy points per game. Of course, those are Russell Wilson's 3 starts. Those include his only 2 touchdowns of the season, 74 more yards in all 3 games, good target share, all those things. So that alone is enough to put him in the wide receiver 1 conversation. Yeah. However, they're playing the Ravens.
Matchup, baby. Let's go.
Most fantasy points to receivers, the most to the outside, the 3rd most to the slot, the most receiving yards, the most touchdowns with 16 already. 8 receivers already have 20 points against him. Jamar Chase, this is unbelievable. In those 2 games against the Ravens this season, has 96.7 fantasy points in 2
Incredible.
games.
Ridiculous.
It's just an absurd number. There's only like 30 receivers that have that many this whole season. He did that in 2 games against the Ravens, so this is an outstanding spot for George Pickens.
Yeah, I'm not going to dive in with too much more because Mike stole all of my stats, which he is wont to do.
Yeah, that happens.
But over at ESPN Bet, this game has an over-under of 47.5. I told you guys last week, remember, a very high-scoring game between Pittsburgh and Washington. We were talking about how, like, this might be where you see more offensive firepower from Pittsburgh. Their over-under last week in ESPN Bet was 44.5. 3 points is a lot in an over-under. So to boost up to 47.5, these 2 teams play twice the rest of the way this season. I don't have an explanation for the Ravens and their bad defense because there is a part of me that wants to say, like, well, you know, they're always playing with the lead. No, last week they played from behind for the 2nd time this season against Cincinnati. They are just booty cheeks on defense this year, and it's completely inexplicable because they led the NFL in sacks and turnovers, and I believe interceptions last year. Oh, no, scoring last year. Sacks, turnovers, and scoring. And yes, they had a brain drain with Mike McDonald now becoming the Seahawks head coach, and Denard Wilson is now the Titans defensive coordinator. Anthony Weaver is now the Dolphins defensive coordinator. I thought the personnel would be enough to kind of keep it somewhat together. No, not the case.
Doesn't seem
they
like
need Lamar to be Superman.
Did you say brain drain?
I was just, thank you so much for coming back to that.
That's brilliant. I love that. It's just a thought like that. The brilliant minds from the defense left. Is that the idea there? Is that the
Correct. Yeah, I mean that my brain briefly drained this summer when I was talking up Anthony Richardson. So I've subsequently
that. I
pulled it
missed
back.
that.
But yeah, brain drain. You haven't heard that one before?
No, I don't know that one.
No, I like it.
I just like it, that utilization of it.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Well, doesn't it feel like this has been the ultimate brain drain because the personnel is different, but like I don't think Jadeveon Clowney and Patrick Queen are the reason why this team went from the best defense in the NFL to quite literally one of the worst.
And they have talent too, especially in that secondary. You got to use that all offseason when Ben Johnson leaves.
I was just going to say I'm worried about that for my Detroit Lions. I don't want
You're
that
gonna
to
have
be a thing.
Everyone's going to be.
I'm hoping.
Honestly, I'm getting like some. I don't want this to be misconstrued because of how these guys fared as head coaches later, but there were times during Bill Belichick and the Bill Belichick-Tom Brady era where coaches were reticent to leave. They just were like, it's such a good thing going here, right? Yep. And on top of the fact that you've got a good thing going, I'm here to tell you that Ben Johnson is very well compensated by the Detroit Lions, right? It's not my job to pocket watch, but it'd be one thing if someone says, hey, like, we're going to pay you $7 million to be our head coach, and you're making $750 as the offensive coordinator somewhere else.
Sure.
Don't believe that's the case there for Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
And by the way, he'll make a whole lot more than $7 million per year if he takes a head coaching job because of his credentials right now. But, like, at some point, you'll be okay if you're making, like, maybe a handful of millions of dollars per year. I think you'll be okay financially going forward.
Yeah, it sounds like he'll do what he did this past offseason, which is just be patient. Like, if the perfect opportunity comes along, you would think he pounces on it, but if not, maybe not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah.
I'm just looking for ways to use that term. So.
I know. I'm
Trade.
with you. I like it. I like that. I definitely am in on that. The only thing I want to say that is a negative for me is you mentioned like the target share. Target share is great. He only has one game over 7 targets this year. I know that this offense doesn't really do that. Like, they don't feature one guy over and over. I would love to be able to see George Pickens have more than 7.
So one game over 7 targets?
Yeah, he has one game with 10 targets. Every other game, 7 is his high for everything else. So I would love to see just a little bit more go there.
So if we concede that this game they're going to need to throw the ball a lot.
Maybe it happens here.
Well, do you guys think that, well, it certainly should be George Pickens. Do you think anybody else from this wide receiver core has like a decent day?
I think if you had to throw a dart at a flex, it's Mike Williams. He scored last week. You would expect him to play more. Now, it's risky, much like Deontay Johnson.
Sure, yeah.
Will he just play 10 snaps or something like that? However, it is a great matchup here. And, again, he found the end zone last week. So if you had to take a shot, maybe Calvin Austin, but I don't think so.
It's just like you'd say, hey, in a game in which we expect him to throw the ball a lot, somebody else could get there. Mike Williams played 9 snaps last week, so not a lot. He did make a lot of those 9 snaps as he had over 10 fantasy points on 1 catch.
Yep.
I'm sure his role will grow, but Dan Graziano was talking about this on Fantasy Football Now last Sunday, that the Steelers are planning to be patient with the guy who, by the way, is still about a year removed from a torn ACL. Yeah. That being said, he's in the final year of his contract, right? Like, it's not like they have him around forever. They probably traded away a 5th-round pick with some intention of making him their number 2. It just might take more than 2 games to get there.
Agreed. Yep.
Speaking of this team, and there's the last thing, and we'll move on. Did you hear Mike Tomlin's comments about Deontay Johnson?
Safe to say that there is no love lost there.
Does not seem like
the comments?
Not much love lost anywhere with him right now,
Nah,
unfortunately. But I think he's could be a little squeaky wheel treatment, I think, soon.
Baltimore. Do you guys watch the show America's Got Talent ever?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay, so the idea is it's different than like American Idol and some of the others where it's singing focused, right? There are some singers who go up there and tear the house down, but there are also people that go up there and there's guys who can fart a flame out or whatever. Like they can do some of the weirdest
really
stuff,
well
right?
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
I didn't expect to hear Fields say fart a flame out today, but
Have you seen this guy? But Mike Tomlin should just go up there and they should be like, so tell us about your special talent. And it's like, I kept Antonio Brown and Deontay Johnson and all these guys like on this straight and narrow for a long time. Right? Yeah, Chase Claypool, like, you name it. It's like, I keep these guys well-mannered while they're on my team.
It honestly is insane when you look at some of the situations that he's dealt with, and then it's like, it feels like in-house they're keeping things going well, and then as soon as people leave, that's been a thing. All right,
Anywho.
Let's dive into wide receivers 11 through 20 if you're looking for a wide receiver a little bit deeper down the list right here at the wide receiver spot.
Mike tried to fart a flame out recently, too.
oh, there they are.
Well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there we
There's
go.
our rankings.
Look at those. Fantasy Focus talent rankings. It looks like Mike Clay is number 1. Field and I are tied for 637, huh?
Wow, interesting. Who put together that graph?
I mean, I had nothing to do with this.
Oh, that's amazing.
But, I'm glad we just show the proof. I mean, those are the rankings.
Did the projection show that or no? Did you adjust the
No, I had nothing to do with that. I mean, those aren't even my rankings. Those just must be from the fans. I think Daniel was second there, right?
I was second, yeah.
Field has a tough matchup. He, as often does, he has to play against himself every week,
That's what it is.
try to overcome those
Interesting.
shortcomings. But, it's, I mean, those check out.
What's the criteria, you think, for host rankings?
Probably showing up here, probably at least on Thursdays and Fridays for when the fans need it.
interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, tied for first for most shows missed.
Yeah, it's just weird. You guys were emailing last night where you thought the rankings were, but it seems like someone
That is
disagrees.
true.
Someone disagrees. Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but you know what? It's okay. It's not my day to agree with everything.
It's on the internet now.
It's the numbers.
So it must be true.
Yes. All right, let's dive in. Wide receivers 11 through 20 here this week. We're going to start at wide receiver 11. That's Puka Nacua, Drake London, Debo Samuel, Zay Flowers, and Tyreek Hill round out the top 15. 16 through 20. T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Darnell Mooney, Josh Downs, and Terry McLaurin. Guys, let's talk about, there's a couple guys here, actually. I feel like 11 through 15, it's pretty chalky, to be honest, when you look at everything. Drake London's going to have a tough matchup going up against Patrick Surtain. I'm assuming he's going to get the shadow there in that offense.
Yeah, sure will.
I'm going to offer something in a second, but well, let's talk about the player we were supposed to talk about, because I want to
Dive into something
slightly
else.
disagree with the idea that 11 to 15 is chalky.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's start then with Josh Downs, who has, honestly, with Joe Flacco under center, has been absolutely fantastic. Mike, I'm going to start with you here. When you're looking at Josh Downs taking on the Jets, how are you projecting him this week against that secondary?
Yeah, this is interesting. First of all, he's been awesome with Joe Flacco. 17.7 fantasy points per game in those 6 games. At least 9 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards, and 12 fantasy points in all 6. So you feel great about him in your lineup. Now, the Jets defense last week, I mean, as bad as you can get. They were giving up long touchdown drives in every single drive. It was unbelievable. Something we're not, is unheard of for the Jets defense, but they've still had the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season, the fewest to the perimeter, the 6th fewest to the slot. They've gotten the job done this year. However, Josh Downs will be in the slot against Michael Carter and on the outside against C.J. Reed and Sauce Gardner. So it could be worse for Downs. I mean, it still should be a tough matchup. They're going into New York. We expect that defense to bounce back a little bit. But at the end of the day, with the volume he's seeing, the connection with Flacco, the fact that he's going to be in the inside and not the outside in that offense is big here. So I think you still feel secure with him in your lineup.
Yeah, you said he's been great with Joe Flacco, and he has been much better with Joe Flacco, but he's just been busy all season. He has 1 game played this year with a target share below 25%.
Yeah,
one game. So he missed some time, obviously.
My point is just like that didn't lead to a lot of production. He had that one wide open catch from Richardson, but otherwise he didn't do anything.
I think that one game he was questionable coming into the week, had a limited practice on Friday as well.
One catch, 3 yards, ugly. That was against the Dolphins when everything went
he's a player,
awry against Miami. Really good player, really high volume generally. I'm going to talk about Tyreek Hill in a second, because that was a thing about the chalkiness that I wanted to ask about. But dude, I'm in a couple of leagues where the Jets hit waivers. Their defense was dropped last night to grab somebody else. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, on paper, shouldn't I be grabbing the Jets defense right now? But should I? Like, which Jets defense are we getting? And a lot of the leagues that I play in, there are some that do bring down to negative scoring, but there are some that you can't go lower than 0. So basically you're saying to yourself, like, sacks, interceptions, those are really important to me. I'm not afraid of, 42-point outbursts, right? So, like, streaming against Jameis Winston and the Browns isn't as daunting, because he might throw for 35. They might, put up 35 points, but he also might get there with, 4 interceptions along the way.
Sure.
That's actually, fairly enticing to me. But what is the Jets defense? What are they? The talent.
What is the Jets as a team?
I was just going to say.
Totally fair, but we've already talked enough about how the offense is just a complete disaster.
The offense kind of factors into that a little bit, though, right? I mean, if the offense was playing better, I would feel like the defense, I'd have more love for the defense.
In theory,
but last year.
Exactly, last couple of years,
Yeah, they've been great. I don't know, man. I just, and I'm not going to try to, do a chemistry experiment on live digital TV/podcasting, but it just feels like, the air was just sucked out of this team at some point this year for whatever reason. And I don't know, they don't have the look of a team that is exhausting every bit of effort that they have. That's maybe a little bit of a risky thing to say, but when I watch them, I don't think to myself, this team is freaking going to the mat every single snap, right?
I agree.
I see teams that are less talented that I see playing their butts off every single week. I see teams that are more talented, the freaking Lions, freaking Lions, man! Yeah. You guys leave it all out there every single snap. So anyways, the Jets, they're just a confusing team. But Tyreek Hill is where I wanted to go.
I think you're right.
Maybe Mike can sort of break the tie here. We talked about it yesterday. Is I'm concerned after yet another dud on Monday night. And the thing about Tyreek Hill that makes him perhaps the scariest player to ever move down your rankings in all of fantasy football is, at least in this era, he's been the most explosive player in the league. That if he goes for 5 for 109 and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders on Sunday, color me not shocked. Nope. But if he goes 4 for 27 again on Sunday, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, he has, his last 3 games since Tua has been back, he has 70-plus yards in 2, and he scored a touchdown last week. So it's not like you're getting 2 points out of him. He's at least giving you enough that if he's in your lineup, you're getting, around double-digit points or a little. But it's not what we want from him, obviously, but he's startable at least. So that gives me enough confidence to just rank him as a wide receiver too, because we're also factoring in the ceiling, to your point, which you have to consider. If he didn't have that ceiling, he might be ranked 30th,
Yeah,
So
it's tough, man.
You're right, it's tough, but I think there's, again, you know what? I feel like I'm going to utilize this tool in our toolbox a little more often, which is just that yes or no question, like we used with McCaffrey last week. I kind of like that because he's that kind of player.
Well,
I don't think you can bench him. It's just like a yes.
Yeah, I brought up yesterday scenarios where I don't think it's as simple as yes or no.
Well, what's that?
Well, like you might have depth, like, and I tossed this scenario, and this is not like a brag. Like this team is fine. It's not like overwhelmingly dominant, but I've got a scenario where I have Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown for 2 wide receiver spots.
Okay.
And a potential flex, but I happen to have good running backs there. Is Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Cortland Sutton, and who was the fourth that I brought up yesterday that I forgot? Oh, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Where'd he go?
I mean, I'm going Hill. We have him ranked 15. I'm sure you have Hill ranked ahead of Sutton and Ridley.
But I'm thinking about it. Like I dropped Hill a little bit lower for me, but it's like, man.
Sutton also has. Sutton's worst games have been worse than.
I know, but
and Hill's
trending up.
Yeah, he's
a little more.
games.
He's been better lately. They've had good matchups. Yes.
I got Tyreek Hill for what it's worth. Mike, you've got him at wide receiver 17. A consensus is wide receiver 15. You've got him at 17. Fields, you've got him at 14. I've got him at wide receiver 24.
Forget everything I said.
There you go, Daniel. Okay.
So,
there you go. That's how you put your.
Where are you at?
24.
Okay, so you're even lower.
On Tyreek Hill. And I have the 3 guys that I have in front of him, like just outside the top 20 that I would start. 2 of them are guys that Field mentioned. I would rather start Calvin Ridley. I would rather start Cortland Sutton.
Wow.
I would rather start Cedric Tillman this week rather than Tyreek Hill. If I had him on my bench, I have no problem with what Cedric Tillman did. I think people forgot. He was available in almost 50% of leagues yesterday off of waivers because I think people just
forgot on the buy
because of that. And so I have him there. I think that if Tyreek Hill finishes outside the top 20 again, we're having a much deeper discussion as to what, at least I am, because I'm already at the point where we thought 3 weeks ago Tyreek Hill was going to come back to being the guy that he was. And I get what you're saying. It's a decent enough floor that you're not just like, whoa, 3 fantasy points, this is awful. But I can get 10 fantasy points out of 30 different wide receivers in fantasy football right now.
Okay, so can I board bet you just because if I win, it means my lineup does pretty well. If I lose, it means my gut instinct is probably correct.
Deal.
Okay, sweet. So I need Tyreek Hill to be a top 18 or better. You need him to be 20 or worse because 14 to 24 would be 10 spots.
Yep.
5-spot difference gets us to 19. I say Tyreek Hill be a top 18 wide receiver in Week 11.
I say Tyreek Hill will be outside the top 18 here in Week 11.
Put it on the board. That's awesome.
All right. Mike Clay.
Put it on the board.
Thank you.
I'll do the background.
All right, running back rank, sorry.
Let's dive into some
We
running
got
backs
time.
here.
It's Wednesday.
I love these Wednesday shows. All right, running backs. We're going to start at 1 through 10 as we usually do at the top of the board. How can you not talk about Christian McCaffrey? He's RB1. RB2, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, and Bijan Robinson round out the top 5. 6 through 10, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs as well. Guys.
Imagine a guy with 21 or more fantasy points in 5 straight games, not even being RB1. It's insane, Bijan.
Yeah,
he's
highest
been,
on
he's
Bijan.
been rolling.
Is RB3. It was hard to not rank him higher than
Mike
that.
is, we're in a really good spot right now with top end running back play.
Yes.
I don't think the depth sucks, but the top end running back play is elite right now.
I mean, speaking of top end running back play, Field, Joe Mixon has been absolutely crushing it. Even last week against the Detroit Lions, in which he was very inefficient, 25 carries for 46 yards.
Nasty run defense.
He still got into the end zone, was still involved enough in the passing game to give him 17 fantasy points. And it feels like this guy's just going to mash regardless of who he plays. And he's got a pretty good matchup this week.
Yeah, the second worst run defense in the NFL belongs to the Dallas Cowboys. So if this game is not competitive, it's probably because, which it might not be, it's probably because Joe Mixon has crushed early in the game.
Yep.
If it is competitive in some alternate scenario, here are Joe Mixon's carries in the 5 games that the Texans have played that have been decided by 1 score or fewer. 30, 25, 25, 24, and 25. The only game that I excluded there was the Bears game where he left early in the first half after 13 carries in like the first quarter and a half. If it's competitive, he's going to get the ball a ton.
Yep.
This is a team that is still kind of finding its way right now in the passing game. Maybe Nico Collins comes back and just cures everything. It seems like actually kind of plausible, but they're going to be a run-first offense right now. It's a great opportunity here.
Yeah, you mentioned the run volume. Also has 8 touchdowns in 7 games, so he's delivering there 90-plus yards in all but that one game you mentioned. So he's just been consistently dominant so far. No doubt about it, an elite option.
Yeah.
A great matchup. Yeah.
Great matchup. And we say this every single week, but when we look back at the end of the season, he may be the guy that we're saying was the best value in fantasy football based on where he was taken and where he is finishing right now.
Or the next guy that we're about to talk about, if he keeps going like he has of late.
Smashing the way that it is. All right, let's look at running backs 11 through 20 here, starting at 11. It is not Breece Hall, but that is where we were starting. Breece Hall, and then Kareem Hunt, J.K. Dobbins, Chase Brown, and David Montgomery round out the top 15. You got Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker III, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, and Ramondre Stevenson rounding out the top 20. To be honest, you got two guys here in both J.K. Dobbins and Chase Brown that have been absolutely awesome based on where they were drafted. But let's talk about Chase Brown on the road, Mike, against the Chargers this week. 8 touchdowns in his last 8 games. He has 54 touches over his last 2 games. That is unreal volume. Now, I want to ask you, what is your expectation for Chase Brown, not only against this Chargers defense, but potentially having Khalil Herbert maybe starting to eat away at some of the volume that he's had?
Yeah, I could see. I mean, first of all, yes, his usage the last couple of weeks has been tremendous. You just mentioned the touches. He has 22-plus fantasy points in both of those games. But keep this in mind, even before those 2 games, when Zach Moss was a factor, he had averaged 15 touches and 15.4 fantasy points per game. His prior 5 games had 5 touchdowns in those 5 games. So he was already playing at least an RB2, borderline RB1 level. In fact, since week 4, he's 8th in fantasy points at running back. He's ahead of Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, and points per game, not just total points, points per game. So he's been crushing it all the way since the beginning of the season, or well, since like a month into the season when they kind of unleashed him a little bit. You mentioned the matchup Chargers. Yeah, only 2 touchdowns, 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs. They have allowed the 6th most catches to running backs, so maybe a little bit there. We've seen more involvement from him in the passing game as of late. So, yes, I do expect a little more Khalil Herbert, but 80-20 wouldn't surprise me. 70-30 maybe is more likely, but that's still plenty to be a good RB2.
I just want to highlight this really quickly before you jump in here, Field. I just think that is an insane stat because I saw it yesterday too. Heading into week 11, the Chargers have given up 2 touchdowns to running backs. That is unbelievable how good they have been at keeping running backs out of the end zone so far this year.
They've been so rock solid on defense, just across the board. Chase Brown's been RB4 and RB3 over the last 2 weeks. So those have been the weeks without Zach Moss. There's a part of me that's like, yeah, like the logical side of your brain says they need to get a little bit more rest for Chase Brown, or they would put this guy who was not built to play this week at some sort of risk.
They also need to win.
There's also the big part of my brain that's like, yeah, they really need to win. Khalil Herbert's still only been there for a week, as of right now, like 9 days.
Yeah.
On top of that, this team might just throw the ball 60% of the time, right? So I don't exactly know where to land on like the rest of season outlook for Chase Brown, other than to say like I'd be stunned if he does not continue to be a top 15 fixture for us the rest of the way.
And by the way, if you watch that game
Absent
against
an
Baltimore, they did throw the ball a lot, and they threw it to him a lot, which was a big change.
9
from early
catches
in the
last
season.
week.
Yeah, exactly right. So even if he gets 4 or 5 catches a game on top of, let's just say worst case 12 carries, I mean that's still, again, he was averaging 15 touches with Zach Moss for a month there.
Yep.
So I think he feels like a high floor option going forward.
Yeah, the only risk here is the injury, and it just, you don't want to say it because it feels like if it happens, you're responsible. But like this is a 5'11", 200-pound back. Like this is not Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, these guys who look like they were built in a lab somewhere. So hopefully he holds up. But man alive, the workload is just too good to ignore right now.
100%.
Yeah. That's my concern, by the way, with Achane, too. At the workload he's getting at, what's he, 187, 185? I mean, he's tiny.
Like 170. But they have been a little bit more judicious with him of late.
Yeah, they have.
Although
Raheem Mostert had 0 carries last week after he had the
2
fumble
catches
the week
for 34
before.
yards. Yeah.
Achane just really being bailed out by just a lot of designed throws in the passing game. I mean, that's got the target shares with Waddle and Tyreek Hill are down because they're like setting up Achane for all these targets. That's wild.
I brought that up on Tuesday's show as well, Mike, is that to a degree, like the Tyreek Hill thing is a little bit of what I think is applying to Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit. They're just like being more equitable with their opportunities across the offense. Like for
Jonnu Smith.
The past couple of years, it was, hey, the good news about Miami is that they're all going to 10 or 17. Now you've got Jonnu and Devon Achane, even like Durham Smythe catches passes out of nowhere now, right? And Mostert had 2 catches on Monday night. So it's just, the whole divide and conquer thing is maybe good in the real world, but not so fun for fantasy football purposes.
Why can't they all be Sean McVay? We love
Right?
Sean McVay. He's
I
like,
know.
Here's my 3 guys. They get everything.
While we're just speaking of like body types, Mama Dopp called me after the Lions game this last Sunday, and she was like, "Is it true that there's a guy who's 165 pounds and his name is Tank? Are you allowed to be named Tank when you're only that big in the
What irony, right?
Yeah,
Right?
that's exactly what I was about to say, yeah.
Exactly. So I love that. By the way, a name not inside our top 20 that I just thought was interesting.
Okay.
James Cook. James Cook has been really good this year, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, that's a big part of it.
So, yeah, that's a huge part of it.
It just kind of showcases the fact that I still think James Cook is a really good running back, totally startable here in Week 11, but we've just had some really good running back play so far.
Yeah, I went as deep as like 24 with lineup blocks at running back because it's like this guy has to be in your flex. You can't bench a lot of those guys in the 20 to 25 range. And I think it helps the wide receiver so beat up that helps you feel more secure starting a running back in the flex, but the position is healthy right now. It's overwhelmingly healthy. I don't think I've ever remembered the position being this strong.
Oh, by the way, we have no
health-wise.
Chuba Hubbard, Tyrone Tracy, James Conner, and Rashad White
Still.
above Irving.
Yep.
Still,
So 5 guys that you're probably thinking about long and hard as at least a flex and maybe even an RB2.
who are the? I'm like trying to think. Who's a major running back injury right now?
The only one we have is Isaiah Pacheco, who's been
yeah.
out for a while.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest one.
And Kareem Hunt just filed right in there. He's been great. I mean, it's like just
Hit, right?
I honestly can't
I
think
can't.
of
Yeah, off the
anybody
top of my
else.
head now.
Let me just rifle through this.
McCaffrey's
frame
back.
while You guys get talking.
Caffrey's
about
back. Brian Robinson Jr. has
Yeah, he's
been
missed a
banged
little
up
bit, and Eckler subbed right in there to
but
the
yeah,
top
at least-
25. It's like there hasn't been a lot of times. There's a ton of injuries. There'll be like 8 guys out, and there's a lot of
100%.
using multiple backs. You'll have like DeMarcado and Michael Carter, like unstartable. Like you have so much of that by this point in the season, and it just doesn't exist right now. It's just
Dude,
not.
I've totally felt that, and not to make this about yourself, but Warham League, like we went a little thin on running back with Ramondre and Devin Singletary, kind of like going like the boring. We had a stacked wide receiver room. Amon-Ra, Drake London, Rashee Rice, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, which, obviously Rashee Rice being hurt and
Yeah,
Deontay
that
Johnson
kills
getting traded kind of hurts you.
That hurts a little bit.
But we've really felt it. Like we have just been rummaging through the bottom of the barrel at running back. But the thought process in prior years was like, I've looked at the history of teams in a 16-team league with 2 flexes, and you're like, damn, like that second running back spot does not need to be a heavy hitter. I'd be happy for a guy that Mike projected for like 8 points. Now, like I'm lucky if my guy is projected for like 5.5 points.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating. We're months away from this, but fascinating to look at next year's drafts because everyone now is going to be kind of like in on a lot of running backs, and oftentimes in fantasy you zig when they zag, and if you zig to heavy running back this year when everyone was on receivers, it paid off for you.
Sure did. Yep.
All right, let's dive into some quarterbacks here in Week 11. I'm going to start at QB1 as we always do. We've got Lamar Jackson at the top of the heap, then Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. Brock Purdy at 4, Joe Burrow at 5. 6 through 10, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Russell Wilson, and Patrick Mahomes round out the top 10. A couple of names here that we could talk about, but I want to mention. Go ahead, Mike.
I want to make a quick observation. I think like maybe we should move Brock Purdy down because if your first or last name doesn't start with J, you really don't belong. You got
Oh my gosh.
Jackson, Jalen, Josh, Joe, Jaden, Justin.
Wow.
You're not wrong.
So I think maybe we fade Purdy this week because there's no J in there.
It's going to be hard for me to fade Brock Purdy right now, to be honest.
Right.
Second in passing yards per game this season, and he's doing some great things with his legs as well. 8th in rush attempts, averaging 25 rushing yards per game. And he's doing the thing that Field loves the most. Second in yards per pass attempt, first in air yards
Hey, baby.
per pass attempt, which you love that. And I actually feel like CMC has kind of helped Brock Purdy and is going to continue to help him be able to find a running back out of the backfield that can catch passes. It's going to be another outlet there. Taking on Seattle, Mike. Seattle is mid-pack against quarterbacks this year?
Yeah, mid-pack. I don't think it's a great matchup or a bad matchup, anything like that, but it is a competitive divisional game, and he's going to be chucking the ball around. 2 straight top 5s now for Brock Purdy. Top 12 at quarterback in carries, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. He's 3 rushing touchdowns. Top 5, this is wild. Top 5 at quarterback in scrambles and carries inside the 5. Like, is this... Maybe he does fit here with
he is
Lamar
a
and
rushing
Josh Allen
quarterback.
and Jalen Hurts. Maybe he does fit in here. Yeah, look, he's been giving you pretty good production in the running game on top of that elite efficiency through the air. That's not going away. He's been doing that since the beginning of last season. So, no doubt, Purdy is finding his way into the just solid QB1 conversation.
Yeah, he's been top 6 in 3 of his last 4 games. So he has been excellent once again this season.
Yeah, he actually has been very cool. Very, very, very good. At home as well. You always love whenever you can get a home matchup for your quarterbacks. I think the only other name that I think is really, I don't want to say the only other name. Russell Wilson being a top 10 guy this week, I think is very interesting.
Herbert trending up. Yep.
Wait, what about number 10 on there?
Patrick freaking Mahomes.
Look at that guy getting back in the top 10. What's going on here?
I don't know what's going on. Everyone has him at either 10 through 12 in our rankings across the board. Maybe with everything that is going on in this offense, it feels like we can start trending back up again for Patrick Mahomes in fantasy after.
Yeah, you think about some of the quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, Bryce Young on bye, that could be it. Just not having some of our normal top 10s.
And also Justin Herbert. This is definitely the highest we've ranked him this year.
Yeah.
The playbook comes out late. I'll file it later. But Herbert and Mahomes, I wrote about both of them in there, and they're kind of improvements the last few weeks. They've both been substantially better in fantasy.
Right, the big question with both of those guys that I would argue, and I think you feel the same way, Mike, especially in the case of Herbert, is like much better forecast this week, but will he get to could he have a top 5 finish in him? Which is going to
does he have the ceiling in that offense? What's interesting about the Chargers is they have led on the highest percentage in the NFL of their offensive snaps this season, which has limited his output.
On the good news, I said this yesterday on the show, Herbert has at least 27 passing attempts in 5 of his past 6 games after having 0 such games in the first 3 efforts. Also, if ever there was a game for him to go ham, it will be this game, right? Because Cincinnati, bad on defense and so good on offense, this could end up being like a 27-24 game, which by Charger standards is a shootout.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, they are running a balanced offense. This is something I talked about in the offseason because everyone was like, they're just going to run the ball all the time. And you look back at the past of Harbaugh and Greg Roman, they call it balanced offenses, and they have a really good quarterback. The thing is, they've been ahead so much they haven't had to. So if the game scripts are a little different, don't be surprised if he just out of nowhere starts throwing it a lot. They're calling it a balanced offense.
If we were going to go ahead, Field.
Oh, no, you go.
If we were going to just stick with the bit, who are you replacing Brock Purdy with? Is it going to be Joe Flacco, Jared Goff, or Jordan Love, or Jameis Winston? Which one of those 4 J's are you going to replace him with?
Probably Jordan Love has the highest ceiling there. Probably.
Maybe Mac Jones, who, by the way, is starting
that's
again
right.
this week against Daniel.
That's not a J name.
Official.
We're doing
J. You said
Yeah,
J.
but Lamar Jackson is. I mean, if we were going to.
Lamar's not a J.
You know
Lamar's
what I mean?
an L.
Last name. One of the names.
Mac
I said one of the
Jones.
names.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Who, by the way, they just announced he is
Mike had
starting
a brain
again.
drain.
I did. I absolutely had a brain drain.
Mac Jones is starting this week, confirmed just moments ago by Doug Peterson.
Oh, really?
So, more Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence. Guys, it wouldn't stun me if Trevor Lawrence is done for a while.
We mentioned this really quickly before we move on from the top 10 to quarterback. George Pickens, we love Mike because the matchup against the Ravens is really good. Is that in part why you have Russell Wilson also appears? Because
absolutely.
The Ravens give up a ton of fantasy points.
100%. Yeah. I mean, he's been. I think he's going to be a fringe streamer going forward most weeks, and if the matchup's this good, then yeah, he's inside the top 10. 4 teams on a bye too.
Let's look at quarterbacks 11 through 20 in case you need to be a little bit deeper on down this list. Starting at QB 11, you got C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love, Drake May, Jared Goff, and Aaron Rodgers rounding out the top 15. Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, Geno Smith, Tua, and Derek Carr rounding out the top 20. Field, let's talk about Drake May. Yeah. Rookie quarterback here.
Probably the highest we've had him ranked yet.
No doubt.
Quarterback 13. Yeah, a couple of those. I'll let Mike talk about the matchup here in just a moment. I'm sure you have some context there. I'll just say this. Drake May has now played approximately 4 full games and 1 additional quarter. In terms of quarterbacks, where do you think he ranks in rushing yards, having just played 4 1/4 games, and it's now week 11?
I'm not going to say anything because I know the answer, or I know roughly the answer. I have a rushing stat, I'll say.
I'm going to guess he is 18th, Field.
He is 9th.
Ninth.
Quarterbacks in terms of rushing yards. So, and this is, by the way, coming without really anything in the way of designed rushes. The Patriots have said publicly they don't plan to really use Freudian slip there, Drake in that capacity. And, they have limited options around them, and he has, been a little bit turnover prone, but tell you what, the rushing is very tantalizing here for Drake.
Last 3
looks like a stud.
That Drake May has played, and I realize it's, you got to take these defenses with a grain of salt, but he played the Jets at Tennessee and at Chicago.
That's the thing, is that, I will just say this, because we talked about this, I remember at the beginning of this, it was like, I was sort of like, hey, there's a chance that by the end of the season, Drake May is looking like a top 12-ish quarterback. Mike kept reminding me of the schedule. He was correct in the sense that, you shouldn't have been starting Drake May against those 3 defenses. Let me tell you this, though. There were 0 duds in that game. 0,
just last week.
7-point, duds, where you're but 15.5 is not a dud.
He had 11. Didn't he have 11 point? 11.8 last week.
You had 15.5. Oh, did I
maybe it depends on your scoring. I think our standard scoring. I have met 11.8, but anyway.
Might have been a 6-point per passing touchdown league kind of a thing. But either way.
But the point is, we did rank him lower last week.
Yeah.
We did not rank him as a starter with that
What
matchup.
team do I have him? 11.76. I can't do math. I must be looking at a different league. Sorry, I have a league that has quirky scoring that I was looking at.
But anyway, to your point though, I'll let you finish. I just want to say that was the 4th best quarterback fantasy showing against the Bears this year. So
also, I think he was quarterback 15 last week. Quarterback 15 last week with that bad performance. So I think there are enough positive indicators here that you can see how maybe not this year, and maybe not next year because they have a lot of weapons they still have to add. But if you told us 3 years from now, Jesus Christ, Drake May,
Bailey's happy.
If you told me in 3 years from now or 2 years from now, Drake May is a fixture inside our top 10 for fantasy, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
That can't be a good omen that he keeps calling him Mac Jones. He had a good rookie or two. And by the way, look, we expected a down game against the Bears. That's why we didn't rank him as a starter. But prior to that, he had 200-plus passing yards in his prior 3 full games, 6 total touchdowns during that span. And just to add on to the rushing, he leads all quarterbacks in rushing yards since he took over as the starter, and he missed most of one of those games. He's averaging 9.3 yards per carry, which is just an absurd number. Now that'll come down, but he is adding a lot. By the way, the matchup, Rams mid-pack against quarterbacks, but they've allowed 16 passing touchdowns at 6th most and the 2nd highest YPA. So this is a better matchup certainly than last week, and why we rank him as a fringe streaming option.
Big fan of Mac Jones in this matchup. That one was on purpose, people. I'm just kidding.
Hey, we could be weeks away from Mac Jones, Drake May, and Bailey Zappi starting, depending on how Jameis Winston does in Cleveland.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. DTR doesn't do anything for you? Anyways,
he's been hurt
up in general for Drake May. Again, it might not be next year, but again, I think in a couple of years, we're talking about a fixture potentially in your fantasy lineup.
And we'll talk at the end of the show here in just a little bit about a few more rookies and
top 10 rookies rest of season.
So we'll definitely have a little bit more Drake May talk. Let's dive into the tight end position here, starting at the top of the tight end heap. Number 1, Travis Kelce. 2, George Kittle. Then Brock Bowers, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku. Rounding out the top 5, 6 through 10, T.J. Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews in the top 10.
Isaiah
Henry,
unlikely to play.
And Kyle Pitts. Mike, we're going to talk about T.J. Hawkinson, but I just want to ask you, how much did it hurt to project Mark Andrews as a top 10 tight end in fantasy football?
Not at all. First of all, I love it. Second of all, Isaiah Likely was out last week. That's going to be in the playbook too. I wrote about what happened there and why. He saw his highest snap total since week 5 of last season in that game. So it was a big change without Likely's been running ahead of him all season. So you take away them 45 snaps, they have to go somewhere, and Andrews took advantage. And obviously the way the game was going was good as well. So I hope he's back. I'm worried that if Likely returns, it could be right back to where we were. It's very possible. But if Likely remains out or limited this week, it's a good spot for Andrews.
Yeah. Let's dive into T.J. Hawkinson then. T.J. Hawkinson has been absolutely awesome in his return. 9 targets, 8 receptions for 72 yards, 15.2 fantasy points. I mentioned it at the beginning of the week. Only 38 snaps. Still not a full workload here when you look at everything. He's still going to get back to being able to run and be out there on the field a little bit more, but he is an unbelievable pass catcher, and I think if you waited for him to come back, you've got your guy a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I don't know that the snap percentage is going to grow that much the rest of the season. I think it'll grow a little bit, but dude, they get good snaps from Josh Oliver. They think he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, which he is, and he had a touchdown. Was it 2 weeks ago for Josh Oliver? Or was it last week? He scored a touchdown.
Love it when those random tight ends steal touchdowns from us in fantasy.
The snap percentage only increased from 45 to 46% for Hawkinson last week. However, where we did see an increase was the percentage of routes run.
There it is.
For Hawkinson. So when he's on the field, they're probably throwing the ball. And when they're throwing the ball, there's a decent chance that Hawkinson is going to be amongst the primary reads. 9 targets on 28 routes last week. I'm not smart enough, but there are so many people in the fantasy community that I know do things of this nature where they track first read targets. I don't know this. Probably 1 week's too small of a sample size, but I'd be curious. Where did 9 out of 28? That's roughly a third. That's got to be close to the top of where a player ranks. And it just feels like when he's on the field, there's a pretty decent chance they're throwing the football his or Justin Jefferson's way.
In part because it feels like Jordan Addison has been a little bit of a disappointment so far this year. And if you had to ask me, would you rather start with confidence, T.J. Hawkinson or Jordan Addison? It's not even close. I'd rather start T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah, and that's a trend. Addison, since he debuted with this team last year, has not been a featured target. He just can't seem to push past the 19% target share, and that's not what you expect from a first-round pick. So whether it's been with Jefferson, with Hawkinson, it just hasn't happened.
Are you a with or without? Are you with or
I'm a whiz without.
was without?
Whiz without. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Oh,
That's a Philly reference,
Philly,
right?
got it.
That's
Yep.
what I got that reference. Yeah, no, I feel it. 67% route participation. That's up a little bit from the prior week, and the snaps are going to go up. That's too low, I think. But it doesn't matter as long as he's out there when they're throwing the ball. He had 9 targets. To your point, you feel great about it. I mean, he's right back in. He's a lineup block tight end 1.
He is a lineup block tight end 1. All right. That's going to do it for the top 10 of the tight end position. If you need anyone a little bit deeper on down that list, head on over to ESPN.com/fantasy to be able to see the rest of our Week 11 rankings. Right now, we're going to dive into a rookie ranking reset. If we were to draft top 10 rookies at this point of the season for the rest of the year, where are we going to go here? We're going to do the draft order. Mike, Field, and then me.
Oh, okay.
Mike,
Good.
Field, and then me. Is that what we're going to do?
I think I got it. Yeah, that works because I think I got it easiest.
You're going third. You're going
I have
second.
the pressure on. The first overall pick here, man.
If you're going to take one rookie in fantasy football
Rest of the
for the
season.
rest of the season, this is not dynasty. This is rest of this season. Mike Clay, who are you taking?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the top options here on our board for
Really
rookies
good.
they're great, but they've slumped a little lately. It's been a quiet month or so
right.
far. I'm going to go with a guy that's been a little quiet as of late and could be looking at a quarterback change this week, which makes me really nervous, but it's Malik Neighbors. The Giants, by the numbers, have the easiest remaining schedule for wide receivers, and that gives me some confidence he'll get back going. He's been wide receiver 20 or lower 4 weeks in a row, but 10.5 targets per game during that span, and we know what his target share looked like even before that when he was dominating in fantasy. So I am nervous about the quarterback situation. But I'm not nervous about the player or the volume or the schedule, so I'm gonna roll with Neighbors.
Can I ask a dumb question?
There's no such thing as a dumb question, so go for it.
If you're nervous about the quarterback situation in Week 11, what were you the first 10 weeks of the season?
I'm more confident. I mean, I don't like I've seen enough of Drew Lock that I'm definitely more worried about that than I am Daniel Jones. I hope maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Probably the best rapping quarterback in the entire NFL, though.
Honestly,
Yeah, that's true.
He's got that going for him.
Yeah, I don't know. He subbed in the other week and it did not look good. That's my concern. But again, if Malik Neighbors getting 10 targets a game against the schedule, I think it'll be enough that he'll deliver.
Yeah. Again, I said this on Sunday during Fantasy Football Now because the game was on London or whatever, Germany game. So we were talking about it. I said it's Monday and Tuesday. Malik Neighbors has become who we thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? It's remarkably inefficient quarterback play, lack of end zone opportunities, but a ton of targets. A totally worthwhile pick at number 1 overall. To me, there were 2 others to consider here, but I will take Jaden Daniels as my second overall
on my
pick.
board.
I don't really need to dive too deep into this, although he has regressed a little bit in terms of high-end production. He's got 3 top 5 finishes. He has 5 top 9 finishes. What we haven't seen from Jaden Daniels for 5 straight games is a rushing touchdown. I don't know if that's randomness or if it's perhaps now that he's playing with that rib injury, those short yardage carries at the goal line tend to be very physical and violent, right? Because defenses know they are coming. Perhaps they're being a little bit more protective of them near the goal line. That being said, still too good of a player to go any lower than I think 3rd overall, but I felt good taking him 2nd. Daniel, who are you taking 3rd?
Really quick, it's hard to believe he's been QB9 or worse 6 weeks in a row. Jaden Daniels, it's hard to believe. This is going to be a fascinating test on Thursday night for Daniels against surging Eagles defense, but also for Vic Fangio and the Eagles defense, which has been the best defense in the NFL the last 4 or 5 weeks. How do they look against the best offense they've faced in a while?
For
So that he hasn't had a rushing touchdown in the last 5 games?
5 games, yeah.
That's crazy because Brian Robinson has missed a handful of those games. And if you told me there was
Austin
going to be no
Eckler.
Brian Robinson, I would have assumed he would have
Yeah,
found the
Eckler
end
has,
zone at least
3 during that span?
once.
So, yeah.
Jeremy Nichols definitely has stolen some.
Yeah, sure
Helps
has.
basically nobody in fantasy football. We love
3rd.
All right. At 3, I feel like there's only one guy here because at the top, there was a clear top 3 in my mind. I think you guys
felt
had it
that way
similarly.
too, yep.
And for me, it's got to be Brock Bowers.
Oh, that was Theo Johnson, right?
We are 3 for 3 in terms of players that we
This
thought
is my
deserved
board,
to
yep.
go. You could also I could have argued in court for Jaden 1, Malik Neighbors.
Agreed.
It's splitting hairs.
Yep. Brock Bowers, 2nd in fantasy points at the tight end position, 2nd in targets, 2nd in receptions, 1st in receiving yards.
good.
He does only have 2 touchdowns. I'd love to see a little bit more touchdown volume there, but he's on a team that just doesn't score a lot of points, which makes it tough there. So he's more of a chain mover than a touchdown maker. But 7 of his 9 games, he's had over 10.8 fantasy points, which showcases such a high floor at the tight end spot. So give me Brock Bowers at the 3rd position.
Okay, no
All right.
debates or arguments so far.
Mike, back to you for the
Back to me.
4th pick.
We're doing this like a real rookie draft.
That's right.
I pick first each
That's
time.
right.
All right, I'm going to go with the guy that's been pretty boom bust, but he was the top non-quarterback picked in April's draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. 4 top 30 fantasy weeks, 57th or worse the other 5. Cardinals receivers rest of season schedule is 5th easiest. So much like Malik Neighbors, the schedule is better. He's a better quarterback than Neighbors too, which kind of helps his cause a little bit. I know he's been inconsistent, but they're playing. They're playing well. And I've talked about this before. The Cardinals schedule frees up a lot going forward. That applies to Kyler Murray too as one of the easiest. So Cardinals offense could be a league winner, going forward. So I'm going to
be a division winner too. They could be the NFC West champ by the time it's all said and done.
Right,
I had him 5th on my board, so I'll get the player that I had 4th on my board next. Tyrone Tracy Jr. from the New York Giants.
I like it.
Positional value, obviously very important here. He is the highest ranked running back in terms of players that we are taking in this draft. I think there's one other back that could come into the mix relatively soon, but Tracy has basically had 6 starts or been the lead back for 6 straight starts. He has 14 or more fantasy points in 4 of those games. He's been a touch less involved in the passing game than you might expect for a player who was a college wide receiver for 4 years, but so impressive as a runner, clearly the go-to guy in that Giants offense. That won't change regardless of who is the quarterback going forward.
And I have them at the 5th easiest running back schedule going forward too. So I like that. What'd you say about another running back coming into the fold?
There might be one more running back that could
A little bit later on in
crack our
our
top
draft.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. How crazy is it that when we're doing a rookie redraft here halfway through the season, we've got 2 New York Giants?
No, for all the bad
inside
things
the
going,
top
they got a
5.
good draft. Yeah, totally. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. I actually felt like this is where things, you could kind of shift things around here at this spot. The number 6 position. I'm going to go with a wide receiver here.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And for me, it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr.
Right, I had him
that, yeah.
a little lower, but I had him at 8th, so not that
I'm
far.
at 6, yeah.
12th in fantasy points, 11th in receiving yards, tied for 7th in touchdowns, and he does stuff after he gets the ball in his hands. 11th in yards after the catch this season. I don't love the back-to-back duds that he's had. Yep. That has been, it feels like if you're
quarterback change.
Yeah, and that's not been great. I'm hoping that even with that Mac Jones and him can develop some chemistry, because we've just seen, the eye test tells me how unbelievably talented Brian Thomas Jr. is. Clearly the wide receiver 1 of this offense, especially with Christian Kirk on IR. Gabe Davis is a distant 2 to me. It's not even close. So I think if I'm going to pick someone else in this offense as a rookie, just given the skill set, for me it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on Sunday at FF Now. Brian Thomas is this year's Brandon Ayuk. It's just the target share hasn't been massive, but he's been a little inconsistent, but he's just been carried by elite efficiency across the board in every category. It's not sustainable. Like, we need more targets and good quarterback play, and I'm not sure we're going to get that going forward. I also have the Jags with the hardest rest of season schedule, so that makes me a little nervous there.
Yeah, I had him at 8, but it's not, we're 8 versus 6. It's not a huge difference. Who do you have now at 7 then?
7, I'm going guy who's 5th on my board, Lad McConkey. 1 weekly finish better than 18th, which makes me nervous. The ceiling hasn't been there. He's been slumping as of late. I do have the Chargers with the 6th easiest schedule going forward this season. I think he's a player. And again, I think the game script is going to – the Chargers are good, right? But I don't think the game scripts are going to be as good every week to the point where, again, they're number 1 in percent of snaps where they've been ahead on offense. That maybe it's 7th going forward. So that'll free up more pass attempts, and I think that's going to help someone like Lad McConkey. Quentin Johnson has stolen some touchdowns, which is fine. That may keep happening, but I think McConkey's the one there, and he's just going to continue to get better, and Justin Herbert's playing better and producing more fantasy points, so I still feel pretty confident in McConkey.
Yeah, I had him 9th on my board, so you're still depending upon a touchdown for Ladd to really be worthy of a flex consideration, because while they could well throw the football more, they're not throwing it so much where he has consistently seen 8 or 9 targets in a game.
Only one game over 7 targets this year.
So my 6th player still available at pick number 8, it's Bo Nix, who, by the way, has been awesome. And I know that quarterbacks, you might say, hey, you're only starting one. We can find other options. But he's now 9th in quarterback fantasy points. He's top 5 in quarterback rushes, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. He's been a weapon with his legs. The efficiency down the field is getting better for Bo Nix. I'm in on Bo.
Yeah, I like Bo Nix here. Quarterback 4 in air yards per pass attempt. He's pushing it down the field, and he's getting stuff done with his legs. It feels like they're being uber aggressive in this offense to try to be able to find his wide receivers deeper down the field. I do want to see, and this is just like it'd just be fun. I want to see him connect a little bit more with his college teammate, Troy Franklin. I feel like there's been a couple of shots that they've just been off with each other, but I would love to see a little bit more there. If I had to go pick number 9 then, you mentioned there may be another running back on this board. I'm going to go with Bucky Irving.
Yeah, next up for me.
Double-digit touches in every single game since week 2. Even with Rashad White in this backfield, 5 games with at least 12.5 fantasy points. I don't think you're starting him as an RB1. At best, he's a low-end RB2, depending on like how many teams are on a bye. He's more likely a flex play for me. But even with Rashad White stealing the majority of this passing game work, I feel like not only Bucky Irving having standalone value in this offense with how the Bucs are playing, but if Rashad White were to miss any time, he would easily be a guy that we would be looking at as a potential starter in fantasy football. So I like Bucky Irving here at number 9.
Yeah, I like that, and he's had involvement in the passing game as well. The touches, the fantasy points, the touchdowns, the efficiency have all been there for him. And sometimes I talk about it, including just during the segment, like, this guy's gone from like a hard schedule to an easy schedule. The Bucs are literally going from the hardest running back schedule so far to the easiest running back schedule so far going forward this year. And they've been good. I mean, they have 2 fantasy relevant running backs with the hardest schedule so far this season.
Easy.
So I think there's room maybe for both of these, kind of a mini Montgomery Gibbs sort of thing where they're both flex options. So
Mike,
I like it.
You're going to round out the top 10 here. Tell us why you're going with Jake Bates as number 10.
Can I propose? Oh, good call. Can I propose the way that we actually select number 10?
Yes.
Because Mike would get 4, you and I would both get.
Well, we
3.
go 12. We have a few minutes. We're going to go 12.
Okay.
Are you deep enough to do that?
Other
What's
that,
your idea?
Or I was going to say, each of us nominates a player for 10th, and if we get 2 votes or 3 votes for number 10, that player reaches the graphic. If we only get each of us votes for a different person, then Tyler, our producer, can put on the graphic the player from the host that he likes the most.
Okay.
Oh,
And make our case.
tough. That's going to be
All right.
tough.
Well, my vote. There's a couple options here. Very close. I'm gonna go with pedigree here. Romo Dunze.
All right, well, Tyler made it easy on you. Don't worry. That was my pick.
Cheers.
Rome.
I was going to say Roma.
Oh, really? All 3 of us. Okay, that's so fun. Yeah, look, I think he's showing signs of trending up a little bit. Obviously, a coordinator change there, so maybe that'll help things. 6+ targets in 3 straight, a 23% target share. The Bears receivers have the second easiest schedule going forward. It's funny how a lot of these rookies, their schedule is either super hard or super easy going forward, just the way it worked out, just a coincidence. But I think perhaps better days ahead for Roma Dunze, so he's my pick here.
Yeah, I'm actually going with Rome for a lot of what Mike said, and this is maybe the kind of thing that come back and bite you in the butt. But this coordinator change feels like it could represent some like fairly seismic shifts here for Chicago.
Yeah.
They were at like basically rock bottom to the point that like it doesn't matter what their plans were, like just scrap them all right now. Like start from scratch. And if you're trying to kickstart this offense, and I would say this, technically the Bears have a chance to make the playoffs this season. They're 4-5.
You don't want to make the playoffs if you're a Bears fan.
No, you do. But what matters right now is can we get our quarterback at a place for him to reach his peak, which is extremely high. Okay, this guy was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. If that means getting Roma Dunze on the field a ton more at the cost of maybe a guy like Keenan Allen, I know they don't play the exact same way, but like focusing on Roma Dunze more as opposed to the 31-year-old Keenan Allen in the final year of his contract, that's okay if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
We've already seen some changes, not just the coordinator change. They've released Nate Davis, a guy who signed a $33 million contract with them this morning. Like, basically everything is on the board right now for Chicago, so I'm going Roma Dunze as well.
Keenan Allen is actually 32 years old, so he's even older than what you had suggested.
Right. Yeah, 32. So anyways, my point is, like, maybe one of the thought processes for Thomas Brown, their offensive coordinator, is, you know what? Let's play the kid. Because number 15, when we feature him, has been excellent. He has 2 games with over 100 yards this season, does Roma Dunze. Get him the football more often, good things can happen. This offense needs good things to happen.
Yeah, 6 for 112 and a touchdown in week 3 against the Colts, and 5 for 104.
Yeah,
in
only
week
good
9
games
against the Arizona Cardinals. They were the only good games, but in part, like it highlights again the reason why he was such a high pick in the actual NFL draft to pair with Caleb Williams. Outside of the joke that I think Jake Bates should be in consideration here because he's 14 for 14 in field goals, 32 out of 33 in extra points.
14th in fantasy points, though, or
I
something?
think he's top 10 in the kicker position.
Well, anyway, yeah.
Hey, man, if you want to say kickers don't matter, that's on you, Mike Clay. But I feel like coming out of that Texans game, I believe kickers are a very important part of this game. However, outside of picking a potential another quarterback, I love Drake May. I would love to see what he's going to continue to do the rest of the season. But Roma Dunze just feels like he has the best pedigree to potentially be one of those guys. A lot of times we talk about at the end of a season, do we see a rookie start to develop that chemistry? Maybe it takes a little bit for things to get going, right? And when you look at the pedigree that this guy has, it feels like second half of the season, this could be one of those situations where Roma Dunze could develop some fantasy potential here for fantasy managers down the stretch.
It'll be sweet to see. It's been a while since we had one of these, but like, I know Daniel will recall this. Do you guys remember, like around this time as rookie season, Amon-Ra went nuclear, and you were like,
Yeah.
holy crap. Like,
Last
who
4
is
games of
this
the
guy?
year,
Like,
he absolutely crushed it. Yeah.
crushed it. So maybe it was a little bit later on than right now. But, like, J.K. Dobbins finished like a madman as a rookie as well.
Yep.
Like, we've seen these guys
Aiden
have
Reed
their
kind of
moments.
did that as well in his rookie
Aiden Reed
season.
got hot last year
Yep.
as well, right? So you're just like, as much as there are players that we did not mention who are off our radar, Xavier Worthy, Jonathan Brooks,
Keon Coleman.
like, it would be cool to see one of those guys hit that stride for the second half of the season.
Yeah, we'd
Yeah,
love
I was
to
just
see
going to
that.
mention that. A couple honorable mentions here. The next guy on my board was Audric Estime in Denver, too. They have a tough schedule. No targets yet for him or touchdowns, but we saw him take lead back duties pretty clearly last week over the other running back. So
Yes.
that's a name to watch. Xavier Legette, we didn't mention. And then a lot of the rookie running backs are the perfect end to bench upside guys. Don't forget, I hate to say this, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but the running backs are going to start getting hurt. And when they do, Trey Benson and Blake Corum, and don't forget about Marshawn Lloyd, who should be back. So I think they really like him.
Jalen
Like
Wright.
they want him involved there somehow. Something happens to Josh Jacobs. Jalen Wright's a good one, yeah. So there's a lot of those guys. Don't forget about them. And they're those guys that are on waivers in a ton of leagues and perfect end to bench guys.
So let's take a look real quickly back at the top 10 that we had chosen for our rookie rankings reset. Number 1 was Malik Neighbors. We're going to throw the full screen up here if you are watching at home. 2, Jaden Daniels. 3, Brock Bowers. 4, Marvin Harrison Jr. And 5, Tyrone Tracy. 6 through 10 for our rookie ranking reset. Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, and then Rome Adunze. Rounding
Someone's
it out.
missing there.
Who's missing there, Mike Clay?
Field's favorite player, Jalen Coker.
You're
Yeah,
not
Fields.
wrong.
Can't believe you didn't draft him. That's embarrassing for you.
It was funny. I was laughing when he had, I think, 7 first-half targets this past week, and then he had 1 in the second half.
Wasn't great. Was not great. I got to clean something up. I said that George Pickens only had 1 game over 7 targets this year. He actually only has 2 games over 7
Oh,
targets.
okay, you
this
were
year.
way off.
Unforgivable.
One
All right,
with
so
11
you'll be off the
That's
show
my
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Mike's
I'll
off the
come
show
back.
tomorrow.
I'm
just
clearly
gonna do a
needed.
solo pod tomorrow. Just me staring down barrel here, talking to you, America, giving you the advice that you need.
That's exactly what everyone is hoping for. Honestly, Mike, I hope you have a ton of fun
Yeah.
when you're in New York City. Think of us
I'll
kindly.
still be working, don't worry.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, of
Working
course.
on eating that food in New York City.
Oh, dude, there is this unbelievable Italian restaurant. It's Sabaro. It's right in the middle.
it's my favorite
Times
pizza
Square.
place
Yeah.
ever.
Local pizza, get some
Oh,
local
it's
New York
so
pizza.
good.
Okay.
All right.
right.
Today's show is presented by Boost Mobile. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself, and we will see you here tomorrow, Field and I, with a Week 11 preview part 1, as well as diving into the Thursday Night Football matchup. We'll see you guys then.
Peace.